Welcome back in. Another Denver Broncos victory Monday, although a little bit of a shaky one, Dougie. We have yet to talk about the Denver Broncos yet, but that's because we're still in high school mode. We've seen plenty of state championships getting crowned last week for golf, and we're getting closer to football playoffs. This is the Colorado Prep Show presented by our friends at UPSWING. I'm the editor-in-chief, Dan Mohrmann. With me, as always, is the editor-in-chief of Mile High Sports Magazine, Doug Ottewill. Dougie, how was your state golf, your high school football, and your Denver Broncos experience over the weekend?
Oh, it was tremendous. Probably the preps far outweighed the pros on this one. I mean, I'm not so sure that Cherry Creek couldn't go toe to toe with the Jets for a little bit. I mean, that's a bad football team, poorly coached, poorly everything. I mean, how do you they really only scored 3 points on the Broncos altogether.
Yeah, it would have been fun for them to haul the Cherry Creek football coach out of the radio booth and onto the sidelines to see if he could have done a little bit of a better job than Aaron Glenn. That would have been Dave Logan did make the call. He did make it out to cheery old London after his Bruins racked up yet another win. And we're going to get into all of that here in a minute. But guys, I mean, we've been talking about it all week. We're working on the next issue, but there's still plenty to look at in the current issue of Mile High Sports Magazine. Doug does a fantastic job of putting all the content together. A lot of it has to do with the Denver Broncos. I really want to go back and take a look at our Knicks tracker to see who's right, who's wrong. No interceptions yesterday, so that total stayed right where it was. And of course, as we talk about high school athletics, we look at our football players on the upswing. We continue to see outstanding performances from several of the kids that we featured in that section. So pick up the new or the current issue of Mile High Sports Magazine and be on the lookout for the new issue. We feel like it's going to be squashbuckling good time once we get the content rolling for that. But as we start off every show, Dougie, what's on your upswing for the week?
Hey, I gotta ask if we've been overlooking Riverdale Ridge this season. They're the number 6 ranked team in the state, but the Ravens have yet to lose. And not only have they yet to lose, but they paced people every week. Now, maybe they haven't had the best competition, but they're still averaging 44 points a game. The last 3 games, they've been over 50 every game. And they've pitched, I believe it's a couple shutouts, over the course of the season. They've only given up more than a touchdown once all season. It just looks like when you look down their schedule, they're a dominant football team. And I know that we talk a lot about the Montroses, the Broomfields, the Dakota Ridges, but I've got to wonder if we're kind of overlooking Riverdale Ridge a little bit. I think, next week they'll play Adams City, a team that they ought to be able to handle. Broomfield definitely handled them this week. But that sets up an undefeated, should be 8-0 on the season, Riverdale Ridge team playing Broomfield the following week. That'll tell us a lot about whether we're overlooking them or if maybe they just haven't played the competition. But that Broomfield Riverdale Ridge game set for 2 weeks from now, that'll be a big one, a very telling game. But yeah, I got to give them, Riverdale Ridge. They're on my upswing.
All right. I think parity or lack thereof is on my upswing for this week. I think once we've gotten into league play, we've started to see a lot of those scores get a little lopsided. You talked about that Broomfield Adams City game. Broomfield put up, I believe it was 73. That, just an overall tough look. I checked out Montrose Doherty over the weekend. Again, that was another very lopsided win. We're just seeing, we saw way more blowouts than we've seen so far at this point of the season. And it's just another reminder of the disparity between the top teams in the classification and the bottom teams. As far as it goes in terms of classification, we've seen the multiplier get voted in. We've seen the dominant program by law get voted in. I just want to continue this trend of assessing what we're doing from a classification standpoint and seeing if we can, kind of tighten things up a little bit. And I hope that's something that the CHASA membership is paying attention to as we move forward. So we're going to bring in our friend Jermaine Stafford here in just a minute, but Dougie, we've been saying it all year. They're the proud title sponsor of the show, but as always, the Colorado Prep Show is presented by our friends at UPSWING. finding the money for training and the ability to become a top level athlete is always tough. But at Upswing, when a young athlete earns an Upswing scholarship, it can be the first step in breaking personal records and reaching new levels of performances, and it gives those kids that access. I mean, when you're talking about the kind of training that they get at Upswing, it gives them the chance to train like champions while building discipline, confidence, and resilience. Once they're done with those heavy training sessions, they Upswing offers a safe, guided space to restore strength and energy at their recovery center. Doug, we've seen that center firsthand. You've got the hot tub, you've got the sauna, you've got the Normatec compression leggings, and the whole boat. It's a fantastic facility. You can find everything you need to know at upswingfoundation.org. And with that, we bring in our buddy Jermaine Stafford, the face of Upswing from the Upswing facility. Jermaine, you've got a big smile on your face. Did you enjoy the football this weekend?
Yes, I did. How you doing, Doug and Dan?
I'm great, man.
Good.
Our roving reporter, Jermaine, he's probably had, more games than you can count this weekend.
I was, and the best game that I've seen was actually up in Boulder. It was a CU game. So
that was
actually,
a fun one.
Yeah, I actually took my son up there. Thanks to old Dan over there at My High Sports, hooking it up, making my son's dream come true. To see old Dion up and down that sideline. He asked me, he's like, does he always walk like that? I was like, yeah, he always walks like that. And I had to explain to him why he walks like that. So, yeah, it was a great game to see that upset. They actually played very well. But seeing a lot of high school games this weekend as well. And just like we always do, go back and watch them film, checking out some guys. So some quite the blowouts, some big games this past weekend.
That's right, but there was a fun game that took place on Thursday, and that's where we're going to start our football chat. And guys, I talked about it a little bit last week, and before we bring in our guest, I'm just going to mention about just how much this guy was playing four-dimensional chess on the field. I talked to him before the game, and he told me if we limit our mistakes, we're going to compete with this team. And of course, I'm talking about Fountain Fort Carson coach Jake Novotny. And when he says he wants to limit his mistakes, he decided to make them all early in the game. The Trojans were down 14-0, 35 seconds into the game. I mean, part of it was Regis took the ball to start the game, and it took them 2 offensive plays to score a touchdown. I know Danny Bailey was trying to grab the video that I shot him, but this made it a quick 7-0 for the Raiders. And very early in Fountain Fort Carson's first series, there's a pick 6 that made it 14-0. But credit to Novotny and his staff. They bounced back. They were able to kind of control things. And with that, we're going to bring him in. Fountain Fort Carson coach Jake Novotny, the master chess player of high school football, as far as I'm concerned this week. Jake, how was the weekend, buddy?
It was a great weekend, man. It's always good when you get a victory and a hard-fought one. And I'm proud of our coaches and our staff and our kids. And I'm watching that video back. I'm going, man, what the heck? It was a whirlwind that first 30 seconds.
And things hadn't gotten even that bad yet.
Right.
Not at that point.
Right. Yeah. So, no, man, I'm just, like I said, I'm proud of our kids. I'm proud of our coaches. I think one of the biggest things about that victory is just the resilience and the grit of our kids. We've been talking about believing that you can play with anybody. We've talked about, having a team first mentality, never giving up. And to see that come to fruition Thursday night was really the exciting thing. So, like I said, credit to our assistant coaches and credit to our players for playing hard.
And Dakari Relaford Jr., your running back, had himself a little bit of a game. I saw him get going. I think it was your second offensive series. He was able to get you guys in the red zone. Couldn't convert necessarily on that drive, but even then, you're down 14-0. You can't score on the goal line. So how do you keep your guys' mentality in that game, and how do you keep a guy like that engaged, knowing that you need a big performance from him?
Yeah, Dakari's a special back, and Dan, you've been following us for a long time. You know that Fountain Fort Carson, man, we have running backs that come through here. It's going back for a long time now, and Dakari is just another guy in the line of succession. And he's a really humble kid. He's a really hard worker. He's a great weight room kid. He's one of those guys. For him, I don't have to do anything. Our coaches don't have to do anything. He just is engaged. He is, you know, a great teammate. And I think our kids know that at any point he can break one. I mean, the kid runs a 10.6.9 on the 100-meter. He's one of the fastest kids in the state. And so anytime he has the ball, it's potential for a big play and for him to break one. And, you know, and the game plan, you know, going in was to give him the ball. And, you know, and if they start keying on that, we could attack the edges a little bit. But, you know, he's a big part of that. I mean, he's over 1,000 yards rushing. And I think our kids know that as long as we got 21 in the backfield, we got a chance. And, you know, most importantly, I think really what I was pleased with is, you know, after that first series, 2 big pass plays. They have a phenomenal quarterback in Rubley, and you know, they attacked us deep, and that's been you know, kind of what we thought they were going to do. And I think what I was most happy with was our defense not hanging our heads or you know, kind of losing our mind and losing our focus, and was able to go out and really put together a good defensive game plan. I mean, after the first 35 seconds, you know, we held them to 3 points for the 47 minutes remaining. So I really credit our defense for kind of, again, not giving up and continuing to play hard and giving our offense a chance to get us back in the game.
Well, you talked about the track numbers. I'm sure that's music to Jermaine's ears. I mean,
yeah, Coach, I've seen him on the track, and he's very, very electric. I just want to ask you one question, Coach. I know the history with Fort Carson, with talking about track and field and football, and these young men coming from different places, they show up to your program maybe a day before the season starts, right? And you don't get a lot of time to build them. Just coming off that old Nick Saban brand, I like to first give you kudos, because when you get young people in front of you and to get them to buy into the same narrative, what are some of the keys that you do to keep that team together? Because it's new people popping in and popping out every year. What's the keys to keep your team together to fight like you did against Regis on Friday night?
Yeah, it's a challenge, and you know, I think that is something that's always been there with Fountain. We've had our best players leave in the middle of the season. We've had our best players come in right before the season, and everything in between. You know, that's slowed down a little bit as Fountain has grown, and as we're not deploying as many military people as much at the moment. But we still have that, right? And so I try to take a mentality with our staff. You know, I spent some time at the Division II level at CSU Pueblo with Coach Riston, and you know, we turned our roster over before it became, you know, what it is now at the college level of the roster turning over all the time. But at Division II, during that time, we would turn the roster over every year, and so every year was a new team. And so we've really taken that mentality that once this team is done, you know, next year's team is a whole new group of kids, even if we have a good chunk of them coming back. And so, you know, we really try to not compare teams from years prior, no matter how successful or unsuccessful they might have been, you know, and we really try to take that approach and build leaders in the weight room and in the off-season program starting in January. And so I think a big part of it, too, is just kind of getting a feel for the type of team you're going to have early on and who those leaders can be. You know, we do things in our program to try and connect kids to our school. I mean, we have kids that have played at 4 different high schools in 4 years, some more than that. And so, you know, little things like, you know, we do a Big Brother program where our seniors, you know, are assigned to a freshman all year and are supposed to check into them. And we have allocated time throughout the week where those guys are building culture with them. You know, we have weekly team meetings where we talk about the themes. We have a leadership council where we're bringing kids in, you know, throughout the summer and then weekly to try and get a feel for the team, try and have them be the voice of the team, and really just make it a big deal. And I mean, if you've been to a Fountain Fort Carson game, it's one of the best places to play high school football in the state of Colorado, I believe. It's a small community. We still have people who come to the games whose kids graduated 30-something years ago because it's what they like to do on a Friday night. And so, you know, and it's a big deal on our campus. And, you know, and that's because of our administration support and because of the history of Fountain Fort Carson. And so we really try to make that a big deal with the kids. And, you know, many kids that have come from different places for us just talk about how different it feels here than maybe some of the other schools that are in similar situations to us across the country. Because we do try to make that a big deal, and we do try to make it a community where you know, it's something that our school and our teachers and the kids that are in the program really feel bought into it and feel like it's something special on a Friday night. And so, you know, it's little things like that. And I think the other piece to it too is you know, we've got a good feel from our kids this year, kind of where we were at. And I think from the start into the summer, we've talked about team over me, and we've talked about process, and we've talked about, putting kind of those selfish things or those ego things aside. And really a big theme for us the last 2 or 3 weeks has been fighting through adversity. And so what was great about that game on Thursday was that, that first drive that Dan was talking about, where we drove all the way down, we didn't score. I saw the light bulb click off our kids that, hey, we can play with these guys. And I think that's something that we kind of battle every year, is when we play those big dogs, is can we play with these guys? And I saw our kids that the light bulb went off. And so that was probably the biggest takeaway from Thursday.
Coach, you kind of just mentioned it. Every team's different. Every class is different. There's a lot of turnover just in your school alone. But there's a history there with Regis, and it's a team that you've traditionally kind of, haven't had the best success for. So, you talk about the light going off and saying, hey, we can go toe to toe with these guys. But what's it like when you hear the final gun and you actually beat this team? What's that do for the mindset of your team kind of heading down the stretch?
I think it's a really a big deal. I mean, you mentioned it. We've played them 6 times in the history of our school, and all of them in the last 10 years since I've been there, because we've been in their league. And Coach Feldman and his staff, they always have a really well coached team. I mean, probably one of the better coached teams that we play every year, and that's why they're good. And you're right, we have not had the best success historically against them. We've beat them 2 times now, if you count Thursday, out of the 6, once at their place and once at our place. And so you're right, that is something that's hard. It's hard with high school kids to get them to understand that. And but I think what it does is it just gives you confidence. It gives you an opportunity to fall back on and at any point for the rest of the season to say, hey, you guys have done it. I mean, that's the message this week for us. We're playing another great team. One of the best teams in the state this week in Legend High School, one of the best quarterbacks in the state again this week. And, for me now, we can look back on and say, hey, it's no more believing that you can do it. You've done it. And hopefully that breeds confidence. Hopefully that breeds a mental toughness to believe that you're in every game, because as you guys know, we go down the stretch here with the games we have left on our schedule. And then, once you're into the playoffs, those games are like that week in and week out. And so, hopefully that's the biggest thing that can come away from it, is that just we don't have to wonder. We know that we've been there. We know that we can do that. And I think that in today's age with kids, I think that goes a long ways.
As a coach with that, you're playing in a really tough league. You got Pine Creek, you got Legend, you got Regis, you got a lot of teams, close to the front range that are, players on an annual basis. How do you kind of balance that, where you've got to build a schedule close to you guys maybe early in the season, but then you start facing these guys? What's kind of the ebbs and flows of a league like yours, and how do you go about coaching your kids to say, hey, this is how it's going to go, and we're going to face some of these guys before it's time to do the real thing in the playoffs?
Yeah, that's a challenge every year, man. I think a lot of it depends on the type of kids you have coming back, how much talent you have coming back, how much you lose into graduation, and we're building schedules off of a 2-year cycle, right? So you're trying to project who can who are teams that can help you in the preseason, kind of where your talent level is, where your experience level is with kids. The great news is, I think, with our league, and it's gotten this way the last 3 or 4 years. It wasn't this way early on, but I mean, there are 4 teams, 3 teams in a given year that are going to make the playoffs that are elite teams. And the way we've always kind of looked at it, and we've always kind of framed it with the kids is that it's a 5-game league schedule. If you don't get a bye week in the playoffs, you got to win 5 games to get in the state championship, right? And so we talk about that being a playoff mentality as soon as you start league play. And that every week is a league championship game. Every week is a playoff game. And that's the mentality you got to have. And I think you go through our league and you're prepared to play in the playoffs. You got teams that you're going to see great quarterbacks every year with Regis and Legend. You're going to see great running game with Pine Creek and Legend and Regis every year. And you're going to, and Douglas County, as a team that's always in the mix on things. And so you're going to see that. You're going to be battle tested when you get into to playoffs. And so I think that's really the message. I think that's really the mentality as our coaching staff takes. I don't know that we necessarily talk about that to the kids. I think the biggest thing we try to talk about with kids is, and it's kind of a cliche thing, but we try to get them to understand, like, it doesn't matter who you're playing. Doesn't matter how good they are, what their record is. It's a faceless opponent. And it's really about the process. And if you try to play every single play like it's got a life and history of its own and give your best effort, and if you do that and you try to out execute them, then the rest of it will take care of itself. And so that's really the thing we try to go with. And with our kids, like I said, it doesn't matter who we play. And I think, for our kids, it's not hard to get up for the Regises and the Pine Creeks and the Legends and those games. It's harder sometimes to get up for the teams that you turn on the film and you can beat, right? And so that's where that sometimes is becomes even more of a bigger challenges, and it comes right back to the same messaging of doesn't matter, out execute, outplay, play as hard as you can. And we try to give them the visual of, hey, if you 20 years from now you bring your little kid back and I pulled up the film and I chose any play, is it going to be a play that you're playing hard or one that you're not? And so don't take that chance of trying to make it be one that you're not playing hard. And that's something that we've really the last 4 or 5 years tried to hone in on. It gets difficult for high school kids, I think, sometimes to understand that. One of my mentors who's also on our staff, Coach Fetters, right? That's been a big, Dan knows who that is, Carl Fetters. And it's been somebody that, we've talked about that being just the message we got to have. And sometimes all that other stuff is just ancillary, and it's hard for kids to understand that in this day and age with social media and all those things. But that's really the consistent messaging we try to have with it.
When you're going into a game like this week against Legends, you have a sophomore quarterback, but you have a running back who can really be that bell cow kid. Is that something that you're going to lean on or to try and keep someone like DJ Bordeaux off the field? Or do you just really try and focus on the things that you guys do well and try and drill that into your kids when trying to score what a lot of people would think is a big upset?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, Dan. I mean, at this point in the season, right, you're not going to reinvent the wheel. You're on a short week anyways. Guys are, battling, keeping kids fresh and keeping them healthy and those types of things. And I think the biggest mistake, because I've done it, I think one of the biggest mistakes that you can do as a coach is you go into it and think you got to change everything because you're playing a certain opponent. And so for me, you go with what got you there. You go with the things that have made you successful, primarily because that's what your kids are most confident in. I think as coaches, we make mistakes sometimes of thinking we have to do a whole bunch of the other. And I've been there. And I think when you do too much, you create confusion, you create hesitancy, you don't get them to play fast. And, sometimes, it's like I've told our coaching staff, I've told some of our coaches in our meeting yesterday is, hey, we can sit here and draw up a million things that would look good, but can our kids execute it? Is it sound? And are they going to have confidence in it? And what we don't want to do is scheme ourselves into a bad situation just because it looked good on paper. If maybe something we're doing right now maybe isn't the best in terms of matching up with something that they do, what's a small tweak or a small thing that we can get in that our kids can execute? Maybe it's something that we've done a few weeks ago or whatever that gives our kids confidence, because what I don't want to do as a coach is take away from our kids playing fast and take away from our kids executing at a high level that gives them the best chance to beat anybody that we play. And so at the end of the day, I want our kids to feel confident in what they're doing and go with what's got us there. And so, yeah, I mean, it is leaning on Dakari Relaford. It is leaning, on our sophomore quarterback who's been a really good player for us. But it's also doing what we do well and trying to out execute them. And they're going to do the same thing. I've watched all of their games, and they're a good team, and they haven't changed anything for anybody they've played. And they've played some good teams down the stretch as well. And so they're going to do what they do, and they're going to do it well. And I think that's what it comes down to, is who can do what they do well. And when that happens, right, it comes down to the players on the field deciding how things go, right, and the plays that come your way, and if you can make them and not make them, right, and that's what decides the game, and that's what you want it to be. You don't want it to be because you caused hesitancy in your kids.
All right, we're gonna let you get out of here in a second, but Jake, word of you getting out on the show was, I would say, leaked last night. So we had some viewer submitted questions that we're gonna hit you with rapid fire.
I'm sure I know exactly who the culprits were on these questions as well.
I highly doubt that. But we just want like your quick answers to each of these. But what's been the biggest change for the Trojans on the offensive side of the ball from a coaching mindset?
Well, we've made some changes on our coaching staff. We've brought in a new offensive coordinator. That's probably been our biggest change, and refocusing on running the football.
What's the biggest difference between coaching at the high school level and the college level? A lot of people don't know that you were on staff when CSU Pueblo won the national title.
Well, it's just, you know what it is. It's time, right? It's time. The amount of time you have at the upper level versus at the high school level when you're teaching classes. It's that. It's time and overall awareness of the kids, their football acumen.
Any plans of a military type bowl between you and Air Academy?
I think that one was from Jaron Cohen at Ponderosa, but there's been discussions. There's been discussions.
I don't know that guy. If you could add 3 coaches from around the state to build your dream staff, who would you add?
Oh, that's easy. Jeremy Mercer, Ryan Goddard, and Jaron Cohen. And then I'd bring you in, Dan, as DFO.
As DFO?
Yeah. Director of Football Operations.
Gotcha. Jake, you've got a tough one ahead of you this week. So best of luck. We'll let you get your kids prepared, but we'll be watching, and who knows? We may be chatting with you again when playoff brackets are getting released.
Hey, I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for everything you do for high school sports.
You bet. That's Fountain Fort Carson coach Jake Novotny. Some coaches around the state wanted to have a little fun with him, so definitely sent me some stuff. But Jermaine, you've seen a lot of Legend football. When you think about this upcoming game, a lot of people think Legend would be the favorite. But what do you think a team like Fountain Fort Carson can do to kind of level that playing field and put themselves in a really good position here with playoff brackets coming in a few weeks?
Well, I think it's a follow-up to that question about who's your top 3 coaches, right? I mean, when I hear that, automatically I think people coaches, right? People, I think Looney, Spence, Coach Betty at Creek. I mean, those guys are, Coach Robbins over at Lutheran. I mean, those are people coaches. And I think that's what he needs to put in front this week. Put the player coaches out in front of the guys, right? It's going to take that. No different than you see what Newhouser did out there at UCLA, right? When they put him up front, finally put that young kid up front, and the kids played hard for him. And opposite of that, what's going on now over there in Pennsylvania with Penn State, right? They can see that. So I truly believe in order to go into a battle like this against that giant of Legend, what it is right now, what he's going to face, is it's going to have to be some inspiration of just motivating those young men to be powerful for that 60 minutes, right? And I say 60 minutes, regardless of the clock, it's going to have to be an hour where they really focus on the things that they do well. They focus on the resistance. They focus on being aggressive, relentless, those type of things for 1 hour. X and O's in games like that, when you face teams that are very talented, it falls to the wayside versus motivation at times. You start to put that energy in the game. Once again, I talked about being in Boulder this weekend, and you watched that CU team live. The sideline was up and about. They were into the game. It was live energy. The students section was filled, and they were actually in it. So they're going to need a lot of energy. They got to get that back rolling. And I think, we're going to talk about this a little bit, but the injury bug for Legend is hitting now without giving their scouting report. I don't want to be that person, but there's a couple individuals, I think that, some places they can attack on the edges, out in the boundaries a little bit, and go from there.
Dougie, we always talk about those lower classifications and how a great running game can kind of be the equalizer for all teams. Relaford is a legitimate 5A back. Is this the kid that can be an equalizer for that when you're looking at facing a DJ Bordeaux, or even if you were to get in the playoffs and you're facing a Marquise Reese at Mountain Vista?
I think so. I mean, I think, a lot of times in my mind, offense doesn't necessarily determine who wins those type of games. I think it's, can a defense like Fountain Fort Carson stack up against some of these really high-powered offenses in 5A? I mean, obviously Cherry Creek is a different animal, but Legend's right up there, the best quarterback in the state. You look around to some of the other ones that are there that could potentially be going up against in the playoffs. You got Fairview that can put up a lot of points. You got Arvada West that outside of this last week has traditionally put up a lot of points. But there's a lot of teams that can score. So I would say, hey, can Fountain Fort Carson, who's kind of slowly climbing up those rankings, Can they play with the big boys on the defensive side? I think they do have a good offense. I think they do have a great ground game, and that can keep away a little bit. But at the end of the day, you got to avoid those big strike plays that a kid like DJ Bordeaux makes on a weekly basis.
Well, and Rubley had, I mean, one of them, really, the video you saw of that touchdown pass, that was set up by a 65-yard pass, and then just a quick out to the flat, athletic move by the receiver, gets the Raiders into the end zone, and then the defense scored the other touchdown. So when you really look at it, Fountain Fort Carson, like you said, Danny Philman is he's a good coach. He always has a well-coached team. That's always a team that's competitive, especially when the playoffs roll around. And outside of that first drive, the Fountain Fort Carson defense surrendered 3 points. It's a little bit like like the Denver Broncos this week. The defense was mainly responsible for a field goal, and that was about it. So if nothing else, I mean, it's seeing what they can do, but a performance like that, especially being down 14-0 that fast in a game, has to instill confidence in a team like that as they move forward and they look toward teams. They still have to play Legend. They still have to play Pine Creek.
Hey, Dan, you said it right. I mean, think about it. Look at that scheme on defense. They're going to face the same type of offense with Legend. You look at Rubley, the type of quarterback he is. Very young star Rubley is. If you remember his family chain there, right? His brother was Jake Rubley out of Highlands Ranch, right? His dad is the quarterback coach, TJ Rubley. Very smart, offensive-minded coach, right? So that scheme, that same scheme against a bright coach is what you're going to need when you go up against Legend with a great quarterback and a great scheme as well, and attacking those edges. I can tell you that video shows you they were caught off guard a little bit, playing a little soft, right? Soft back because of the speed that Regis does have with those young fellas. I've said it all year. They're very young, right? Unlike Legends, they're very old, right? They're going to come out of that gate totally.
We call high school kids old. Let's not do that.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
That's going to make us all feel a little older now. But.
Well, the older you are, the more you're worth. That's how I can look at it. So when you look at the way that they approach this game, I mean, if they go back to the way, you go back to the way Regis was very young, came out of the gate 14-0 up, they're celebrating on the sideline. They won a game. The same thing with Regis. I mean, what's going to happen at Legend, they're not coming out there looking at that team the same way, right? I mean, those are older guys, are very respectful. So not saying Fountain Fort Carson had their guard down, but it was a little different. They're going to have to flip the script, and the way Regis came out, that's the way they're going to have to come out against Legend in order to come out on a successful side.
Should be a fun one this week with the Trojans and Legend. I think a little bit like you talked about with Riverdale Ridge, Dougie, like we're going to get a really good sense of what Fountain Fort Carson is truly about when they see this Legend team. But we had some other interesting notes around 5A over the weekend, guys. Arvada West survived a major scare from Columbine. It's, that's a sentence that you would think you would never have to say at this point in life, that Columbine nearly scored a big upset win. But are the rumors of the Rebels' demise highly exaggerated at this point?
Oh, I think so. I mean, I would never say the demise. I think good schools have down years, and this might be one of them. But I also think that when you look at that Columbine offense, and again, the younger your roster, the longer it's going to take for them to figure out exactly what they're doing. Obviously they've been running the system since they were in junior high, but it's a step up when it's your turn to play varsity snaps and run the Andy Lowry system. And Arvada West has been a team that we've talked a lot about on this show. And I remember last week we said, hey, a couple teams on the rise potentially, Regis and Columbine, because they had both won 3 straight games, even though they had, come off of a 0-3 starts. And Columbine looks like a team that it may be a little too late, but they're starting to come together, because you can't, they really should have won that game, or at least say could have won that game. You don't go up against Arvada West unless you've come a long way from your 0-3 start and give them the scare that Columbine did. So, kudos to Columbine, but it just goes to show you that a lot of these teams, whether it's they're not quite as powerful because of injuries at the end of the season, or maybe they're better because they've gelled at the end of the season. So always makes for a great time when you get into the first round of state, because these teams are different. They're not the same teams as what they started out to be.
Yeah, Doug, great point. And I go back to the youth size of it. I would say the demise is not necessarily a way I would describe that team. I would say youth is playing its part, right? I mean, when you start to look at the way they're losing the games, right? Of this game, they were up for it. When you have young guys like that, once again, they get excited. But it goes back to what I've spoken of all season here on our show. The feeder teams, the youth teams, make a big difference, right? And when you start to get these youth teams in, youth players that come in, it takes a while for them to actually gel and make it happen. We were looking at Mountain Vista. We thought this was going to be that comeback year because everyone was young. And here they are. They had a couple key players that were ready to go, right? It was no more Carter on the defensive side, right? Obviously, they didn't have the big arm with the QB. Here comes another QB saying, hey, I have two arms as well. So you start to look at Columbine and say, where are the feeder programs? What's happening in that area when it comes to the youth? I believe they're still playing AYL over there in that youth area. So just those feeders program make a big difference. But as far as the season goes, I think coach wants to keep them engaged in how they uphold the brand of what they do. We learn more when we lose in the game of football, right? Winning just allows you to try to grow some discipline to continue to win. The hardest job to have is, over there in Green Valley Ranch, in Green Valley over there with you talk about the Creek team and what they have to do every week to get up. With these young teams, especially with Columbine, that coach is he's in a tough situation right now, but I'm sure they're turned around.
And if the playoffs started today, so I'm looking at the Chassa selection and seeding index right now. Columbine sits at 25. So they have some work to do. They got to play their way back into that postseason field. This is a team that's going to have to learn to grow up really quickly. And, luckily for them, they get a nice break in taking on Ralston Valley this week after coming off that game against Arvada West, so.
That's good. It's a good thing, actually, because if you're coming off that game, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Arvada West is still ranked a little higher than Ralston Valley. If I'm Coach Lowry, I'm saying, hey, look, we should have beat that team. We can go out there and go toe-to-toe with this team, too. You get a win against one of those signature opponents, and, I know we talked a little bit about it last week, but the way that the indexes work, that's a win that's worth more than most wins. So, yeah, could they climb back in? Sure, but they got to pick up one of those kind of wins.
Well, and it's a loss that if Columbine doesn't come out with a win, that's actually a loss that from the seeding index standpoint might even help them get into that top 24 because strength of schedule matters. And so if Ralston Valley wins that game and moves to 8-0, that doesn't reflect poorly on Columbine from that sense. Couple of other notes. Pine Creek was down for a good chunk of the game against Douglas County on Thursday. They battled back to get a win. And then, guys, the top ranked teams in 5A. Cherry Creek did what they do. Ralston Valley, can't remember if they were off or if they won a game. It all kind of blends together. I don't have that right in front of me.
If you're in the top 10, there's a good chance you blew somebody out. That's the way I looked at it when I was looking down the scores this week. It was just dominant teams dominated this weekend.
Yeah, Ralston Valley beat up Denver South. That's what happened. The only top 5 team that didn't get a decisive win was that Arvada West team. And then, of course, Valor Christian ended up getting a big win. They kind of look back to form. Legend 50-7 over Ralston Valley. Fairview won big. Eagle Crest with a 14-point win over Cherokee Trail. So
that's a big win. It
is a big win.
I'm sorry to jump in on that one because that was one I was watching very close because that's a rival game, right? Mm-hmm. That's the battle of Smoky Hill, as you call it, if you're familiar with that area. Those kids make a decision: do I go to CT or do I go to Smoky? That's that 8-0-0-1-6 battle. They call that game. That's a huge win for Eagle Crest. I know you haven't gotten to this point yet, Dan, but that's a game I'm looking forward to. It's Eagle Crest Cherry Creek this week.
Yep.
In theory, because that's Eagle Crest is playing very well. They're very strong right now as far as health wise. Those kids are rolling, and I know every year we talk about this. Creek usually has a week where it kind of, those W's build up, and some of that poison gets drunken, and they drink, more of that poison versus the praise. So seeing the praise go. So it will be a battle this, I believe it's Thursday night's game there between those two.
Yep, it is Thursday night, so that's definitely one. Legend Fountain Fort Carson is the other big 5A game that we'll be watching on Thursday. Guys, I want to shift. We're going to go from the big guys to not quite the smallest guys, but the smaller guys. The game of the week probably took place at the 8-man level, where we saw Akron come away with a 28-24 win over Haxton. The Fightin' Bulldogs have looked like the team to beat in 8-man all year, and Akron has kind of been quietly flying under the radar. Overall, just a huge win for the Rams. Colton Randall, their quarterback, threw for 309 yards. You don't think of the passing game when you think of 8-man football, guys. So this is one that gets, that'll raise my eyebrow a little bit. I've seen the Rams play a little bit this year. They were incredibly determined to run the ball against St. Mary's. So when you see numbers like this, it's always fun to watch. But if without having seen too much in person, guys, the idea of this being a state championship game for the second year in a row, is this a result that you're going to lean heavily on when you're starting to evaluate how that might look?
I think you got to look at it, obviously, but those teams are right there, 1-2, 2-1. It's 28-24. It wasn't a blowout win, so I think they're right there, 1A and 1B, if you ask me. And I think that a game like that just sort of sets a stage for, what could potentially be a rematch in the state championship game, and it's not a big enough win for either coach to feel either confident or defeated. So both coaches go in there saying, hey, we got them, we can do it again, or hey, we one more possession, 1 more minute on the clock, and we get a chance to win that game. So I think it's a game that just shows, hey, the rankings right there. Your 8-man guys are spot on there, Dan.
Yeah, I see that as an opportunity for both sides to tune in their X and O's, right? I mean, you get some great film. You get to go back and tune up. What did we lose on, and what do we win on? I mean, when you start to look at that type of game, no one wants to show, everything that you may have to use against an opponent at a state championship. But obviously in that game, you get to pull some things out. What worked, what didn't work. So as well as the kiddos, now when you come across number 25 or 34, you kind of know what he likes to do and what won last time. So when your players get that kind of real application opportunity where they're applying their talent against each other, that's always a plus. It should be a nice state championship game if they're there.
Well, and I'll tell you what, guys, I watched that state championship game last year. Of the 4 that you would see down at CSU Pueblo, that Akron Haxton game was probably the most fun overall. Wellington TCA was very competitive. Unfortunately, it came down to a very bad officiating call at the end, which kind of put a dark cloud over that whole result. But I'm so excited for that 8-man title game, especially if this is the rematch of it, because I've seen a lot of these kids over the last couple years, and I think it would just be one of the more fun competitive games to watch. Across the state, guys, we're starting to see, Jermaine, this is going to be key. This is why kids should be going into UPSWING or start to look into it. We're starting to see the injury bug bite some teams. You mentioned Legend a little bit, but if we look toward 3A, Meade lost quarterback Ethan Elmore reportedly for the year due to a leg injury. Palmer Ridge's Knox Tinlin, their starting quarterback, didn't play in their win over Durango. Jermaine, you might be the guy to ask about this, but what's the biggest key for a team that, has deep playoff run aspirations, has state championship aspirations, and they suffer a big loss at this time of the year because of an injury? What's the best way for someone to adjust?
Well, that happened 6 weeks ago. All right. What I mean, you start to plan for the next guy up at that point. Because one thing you will never change in sports, definitely not football, and here in Colorado, there's a 28% chance that injuries are going to happen. You will never prevent them, I mean, you'll never stop them. You really can prevent the percentage. I mean, NFL is 35%. Think about that. It's 35% of NFL players will be injured this year. So it's something you will never stop. So as a coach, you go into the year, and a parent or a kid, you go in, you start thinking about the next player up, or the mentality. If it is me, what is my support system, right? How am I going to handle this ankle injury? How am I going to handle this shoulder injury? If I have a guy who's down, my first 3 guys, 1, 2, and 3 in my depth chart are ready to play. I mean, there's no way around it. You can't change the injury, and you know it's going to happen. I'm sure that the top to the 20th to the top ranked team right now are looking at how can I put my team in the best position if someone goes down. If I know I have a battle going on at wideout, that's a good thing, right? If you look at Detroit Lions, they stopped going back and forth with those running backs, right? And said, we're just going to put an offense together where they both can play at all times. So you start to look at that and say, hey, I'm going to build now, so when it does happen, if it happens, we'll be in position to win. But yeah, and then you also get into this, soft tissue things, and what are you doing to prevent the things that comes from wear and tear and capacity and volume. So it has to be recovery. Obviously, here at Upswing, we see a lot of those young men and women come in here, and with our recovery center, cold plunge, recovery boots, making sure you're sleeping. That's the biggest hurdle for our youth today, is getting that 8 to 10 hours of sleep. And what nutrients are you putting in your body at this time of the year to put your body in position to be competitive, right? It's easier for you and I, Dan, and Doug. I know you're avid athlete yourself, doing what you like to do. You strike me as a writer. Are you a writer, Doug?
Rider or writer?
Yeah. No, I know you're a writer. You're the editor. I hope you write a little bit. I'm saying, are you a rider? Like, do you like to ride bikes? Yep. You struck me as a bike
no, I don't ride. I don't ride bikes. I ride horses a lot, though.
Well, that's even now you're showing out. We'll take it there. You're showing out now. But
why haven't you done the show from a horse yet? That's what I want to know.
The Wi-Fi connection's bad.
I'm sure it is. But I tell you what, before you get on that stallion, I know you'll do this. You'll take care of your body first, right?
Absolutely, you got to. It's a very core intensive workout, in all seriousness, and yeah, if I'm not in shape, it's a bad next day. Absolutely.
So what coaches do, to be very short with it, is prepare them for all facets of that injury once it prehab and it's rehab, right? I mean, there should always be 2 parts of your program to look to have. And I tell you, some of these teams that aren't injured, and I keep alluding to a couple that aren't, those are the ones that are hoping it doesn't hit them before December 3rd or 4th.
Well, and I know everyone's going to try and limit it. Doug, if you look at these 2 specific situations, right, they're not in the same classification, but if you look at someone like Meade, I mean, their offense is predicated more on running the ball. We've joked they've got Big Jim there at right tackle. You just hand the ball off tackle to the right side, you're going to be in a good spot. You can hopefully get 4 or 5 yards to carry. Palmer Ridge is more of a spread offense type throwing the ball. I mean, it's always a leadership question, though, especially when your starting quarterback goes down. So is there any way that that either one of these situations, you can kind of limit the damage, not just from an on-field standpoint, but from losing your leader on the field?
Well, I think it's probably not as pronounced as it is in the NFL. In the NFL, if you lose a Joe Burrow, I don't care what you've done, you're done. You're not going to be able to the same team. But I think in high school football, and we talked a little bit about it with Coach Novotny, you got a good sophomore quarterback. You obviously don't want to lose him, but you also have a bell cow running back. So you bring that element into your game, and maybe you lean on it a little bit more. Or, you look at a team like Broomfield. They start out the season with a very young and inexperienced quarterback in Matthew Marlett. They run the ball a lot early in the season until he gets seasoned up, and their passing game's kind of catching up to the running game. So, outside of, say, maybe Valor Christian, who really has been going with 2 quarterbacks all season, losing one of them may not be quite as detrimental as losing a quarterback at say, Palmer Ridge. But I think no matter what, you don't want to lose your signal caller. That's your guy. especially later in the season. They've built up that trust. But it happens. So I think, at the high school level, a lot of that's on coaches to figure out, okay, how are we going to pick up where we left off and lighten the load for the next kid coming in who doesn't have much experience.
Yeah, and we saw, we'll get into this real quick. We saw a kid last year from the 4A football, or from the 4A playoff standpoint, Cade Saunders, the starting quarterback this year for Montrose. He was not the quarterback for most of the year last year. It was Chris Mock, and Mock got hurt going into the postseason, and it was Cade who ended up coming in, just being able to run that offense well, and that's a running offense, was able to get them to the state title game. Of course, Montrose had a massive win over Doherty on Saturday. Elijah Womack, guys, I featured him last week in standouts. I just want to let you know he's still very much a dude. He can run the ball either through you or around you, and once he gets out into the open field, he's really, really tough to bring down. He's got great breakaway speed and just looks like a good college football running back. That's the best way that I can describe Elijah. So they have a big game ahead of them. We saw what a lot of people would say is an upset. Mesa Ridge, who has struggled a lot this year, bounced back to beat Pueblo West. And so now we're looking at, is this a league championship game in that Southern Colorado, that SoCo 1, as they call it, league, and that was the case last year in this matchup. So are we seeing another situation where if Mesa Ridge wins this one, all of a sudden they're in contention for that league title and getting into the playoffs no matter what?
Well, I look at it, league title is one thing, but I'll tell you what, I vote in the 4A poll, and it by far is the hardest thing I do every week, because there's so many things that change every week, and a team that lost to somebody before beat somebody that they beat. I mean, making sense of 4A outside of, say, the top 3 or 4 is a difficult task, and Mesa Ridge obviously falls into that along with Pueblo West. So those teams are capable of being right there, but trying to play the apples to apples, who did who beat on which weekend, it's tough, because there's a lot of teams giving each other losses throughout that 5 through 10 in 4A.
Yeah, you start to look at how teams match up, right? I mean, and Doug, you hit it right on the head. You as you do week to week, you steal my answer. I think I'm gonna start going in front of you, Doug. You steal my answer every week, but we can't get too deep in that, like how someone played against someone else, right? These are all high school kids, they're varsity players. They put their one leg at a time. Some guys do anyway with their pants in the locker room, but the guys who put both legs in, you watch out for those guys, right? I'm gonna tell you that, but. You can't look that deep. It's going to be a great finish. It's going to be fast. I'm very excited to see how and who matches up with who when those rankings come out. I mean, as far as those matchups come out in the playoffs, we will be surprised at some of the teams who fall out early because they just didn't match up against a team who may have been ranked lower. It's just their corners are hurt. The DNs are now healthy, and the pass rushing is there for them. So they're going up against a team that's hurting on the edges. So yeah, it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, that's one game that I've got kind of circled to watch, and I know we'll get into some of that a little bit more. One more thing I've got to stress, Doug, you mentioned that we weren't paying enough attention to Riverdale Ridge at the top of the show. We may not be paying a lot of attention to Brush either. The Beat Diggers are still undefeated. They've cracked. I think they're sitting at number 4 right now in the selection and seeding index. So that's a team that could make some noise with 2A. I mean, Strasburg is right up there. Of course, we had Aiden Dodge featured in the UPSWING facility in Mile High Sports Magazine, and that's a team that continues to play well. But the Beat Diggers are rushing for 360 yards a game, which is what you want to see out of a 2A program, looking to counteract Wellington and TCA and the likes of those guys. But what's on our mind in terms of games we've got to be watching this week, guys, because we're going into to another one where there are some significant matchups.
Jermaine, you go first. I don't want to steal. You probably have way more
go first, but Doug doesn't steal his answer.
Well, he's not going to steal this answer because he does. He may have, but I'm looking forward to, as I spoke before, the Cherry Creek and Eagle Crest. I would like to see that. I think that's a game where it really put in perspective, I think, where Eagle Crest really sits And Cherry Creek's, I would say, the biggest challenge yet so far, to see where they are in regards to, in-state play or just some competition in general. So I'm very excited to see that game. I think there's some great players. I know some players that we featured in our Preps magazine, this last edition with Jackson Roper, Cameron Bell there. So it's going to be Eli Cromwell. So it'd be exciting to see those guys go at it. And once again, this is that witching hour, right? We start to get into that October, and starting to see just what teams have to bring to the show.
Yeah, it's like Yogi Berra used to say, it's getting late early, guys.
Yes.
That's right. Well, speaking of getting late, I do like Jermaine's answer, because I want to watch Cherry Creek, because you can always make other plans that same night, because you don't have to stay the whole game. You leave at half if you want. No, I got a couple on my radar though. We already talked a little bit about Columbine, Ralston Valley. I think that's that's one of those ones that you might be able to say, hey, don't quite count out Columbine just yet. We thought we could earlier in the year, but if they're able to go toe to toe with Ralston Valley and still somehow sneak in to the index, or if they're able to pull off an upset, I think then you all of a sudden look at, hey, that's a team not many people are going to want to face because of how they take the air out of the ball, regardless of who they play. The other one, and you guys will probably make fun of me for this, but we got Lyman and Ray this weekend. Traditionally speaking,
make fun of you for that. That's going to be a great football game.
Because I keep too close of an eye on Lyman, I've been told. But I will say that this is a state championship rematch of a rematch of a rematch, and maybe a state championship preview. Lyman Ray, I don't care what year it is, but in the last 10 years, that's a game you must watch if you're a 1A football fan.
Well, and don't forget that Ray runs that single wing offense that's just very near and dear to my heart. So it's probably one of the ways that you have to beat a team, or that you can beat a team like Lyman. We saw what Buena Vista was able to do. They kept that game close, and then they struck at the end. You run that single wing, your goal is to control time of possession, and that's how you're going to end up beating the Badgers. Guys, for me, if I look back at that 2A, Resurrection Christian handed Eaton a pretty big loss over the weekend. The Reds need to respond, and they have to respond against a team like Wellington this week. That is a big one in the 2A classification. I think Wellington is the best team in 2A. I've been saying it all year. I still believe it. They have a lot of kids back from that state runner-up team, and I think they're still a little irritated at the result of that state championship game. So that's a team that's been playing with a chip on its shoulder, and they're going to face their toughest test of the year so far in Eaton. So that's one that I'm keeping an eye on. And then the Battle of the Ridges down in Colorado Springs, Palmer Ridge and Vista Ridge. We're going to see exactly what Vista Ridge is made of. They had some good wins early, including that Columbine win. And Palmer Ridge is still undefeated and regarded as one of the top 4 teams in the classification. So that should be a really, really fun game to watch. And we are looking forward to that. Jermaine, I feel like we've got to let you go. Get back to training the kids so that we have more high school football to talk about in the next 5 years. But
he'll probably be back. He goes and then he gets in the chat line and says, I gotta say something, and he gets back in, and that's why we love having Jermaine on.
I know
he's not just a guest; he's a fan of the show.
I can't decide if I'm more impressed that he runs the business or that when he logs off he continues watching the show.
Well, you should. I love the show. Right. I am a fan of the show as well. Right. I hope I'm inducted into the Maha Sports and Colorado Preps family and not just a guest. But I know where you're heading with this, Dan. We are so excited this week here at Upswing. It is fall break, and when fall break comes about, if you're a parent and you understand what fall breaks is all about, you start to reorganize your life in general. Right. It goes back to that summer training. It's like what you did in the summer. All right, it's fall break. We got to go back to that plan again. Here at Upswing, we're starting tomorrow through Friday. We're going to have AM classes for all those parents who want to drop off their little ones here and train with us very early. We have the 10 to kind of 12 o'clock slots ready for kids who want to come get fast and get strong and bring them here. And if you bring a friend can come join us with you as a compliment, and they are around. As I can show you here, I have one. Look, I'm playing, fall break here is my little guy. You know, my little guy's here with me at fall break. He's working. He doesn't know he's going to work today. But as you see his face there, he's like, he thought he'd come track. But yeah, this is our fall break here at Upswing. We're bringing the kids in for the break. This is my son, Masai. He had fun at the CU Buff game this past weekend. He was cheering.
Go Buff. Yeah, big win.
You know, he was asking what SCO Buff stood for, and he learned it before I learned what that means. So yeah, it was. We're very excited this weekend, this week here at Upswing to bring in our kids during fall break, and I'd love to make it happen.
Did he lead the charge when the students rushed the field?
I'll have to send you a video. He had his one finger up and he was cheering. He said they look like spiders running on the field and all the black, because they did. I mean, they were rushing it. As Dion said, who made up that rule, right? I mean, who's paying for that? We all chip in. I guarantee you, Dion wants to pay 50 grand every week and have them rush the field, because that was a well earned win, and it was worth the 50K. I could tell you that.
Probably.
And you guys are good luck charms, apparently.
That's right.
Well, I chipped in. I could tell you that with that popcorn and soda there, the prices they have there at Folsom Field. But yeah, we're very excited here, and we're excited to see you guys next week.
Jermaine, enjoy your fall break.
Good stuff,
make
Jermaine.
Sure the kid's not working too hard, and if he's maybe even get some training in.
Yes, he's going to train. He's my track kid here. He gets his training in as well.
Love it. Jermaine Stafford. We will talk more football with you next week. Dougie, we had some good things happening last week too, and more good things happening this week. We're going to get into some state champions that were crowned and teams that are looking to win some state titles right after this.
There are those who say the modern world has made us lose touch with places like this. We say, that depends on what you're driving.
This is Tim Anderson of Gordon Insurance, and we are proud to support all of our area athletes. With offices in Lyman, Callahan, Flagler, Sterling, and Kit Carson, we offer all types of insurance, including home, auto, commercial, farm, crop, life, bonds, and workman's compensation. We are independent and thus can offer you multiple choices of companies, not just one. Call or visit the office near you, and one of our agents can take care of you. See all of our contact information by going to www.gordonins.com or call me at 719-740-1361.
Welcome back into the Colorado Prep Show presented by Upswing. Dougie, we got to spend some time on the links last week, as did the kids across 4 sites. We had the boys golf state champions crowned, the first state championships completed of the fall season. At 5A, Fairview's Miles Cool played it cool after his teammate Ash Edwards took the day 1 lead. Miles came back, ended up taking the individual championship at Book Cliff Country Club in Grand Junction. Cherokee Trail ended up battling to get the team win, beating Denver East in a team playoff, which I haven't seen. I'm curious how it works. We need match play to determine a team state champion, but overall, a fantastic effort out there in 5A. 4A, Grand Junction's Hunter Simmons ended up winning the individual championship. Meade, the Mavericks, overcame the coaching of Mike Ward. And I say that with love from the Meade head coach, but overcame coaching to capture their first team championship on the links. Dougie, you were there with me at 3A at Eagle Ranch Golf Course. Nicholas Brooks, man, I mean, you got to tell me what you thought of watching the Lutheran lefty just make a mockery of a course that you've played a few times.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he stood out, and every time you looked up the leaderboard, he was right there and kind of held on for most of it. But I would say, every time you looked up, somebody from Lutheran was doing something. There was a reason that they won the team state title up there, because you could just tell they were playing well. And every time someone was making a big shot or having a nice approach or whatever, you look up and it's a Lutheran Lion. So it was fun to watch, really fun to watch, a course that you played the day before and see how those kids kind of tackle it. They obviously tackle it a lot more effectively than you or I, but just overall, what a great setting, beautiful course. The leaves were changing. I don't care if you win the tournament or you finish closer to the bottom. It seemed like all those kids up there at Eagle were having a great time.
Yeah, and we'll give one more shout out to the two Wheat Ridge guys that we joined their practice round, had some fun with Jack and Ethan, and props to those guys for putting together 2 days of tournament play at 2A down at Elmwood Golf Course in Pueblo, not a country club. Swinks Noah Pearson. He was the other one who had to compete in a playoff, ended up taking advantage of his home turf. He's a kid who plays a lot of golf in Pueblo. He ended up winning the 2A state championship. Dougie, you saw the first 2A boys state championship last year. It was our guy James Noakes who was on site. Gave fantastic coverage of the 2A golf championship down there at Elmwood and Frontier Academy. Yep, there's Noah with his coaches. Just I've had a chance to actually walk the Pueblo Country Club a little bit with that kid. He's a great kid, good player. Hoping for big things for him on the golf course. But Frontier Academy won the team championship to wrap up state golf, and that'll be it for the links until we get to the spring with the girls. Yesterday was a big day for the flag football girls, Dougie. Something we've been tracking all year. State tournament brackets released. You can find the state tournament brackets on coloradopreps.com. We got those up yesterday after CHSAA released them to the public. Defending state champion Mountain Vista comes in as the number 1 seed of the 5A bracket. Finished the regular season undefeated. They average 46 points a game and give up fewer than 6 a game. No question in your mind that they're the favorite to repeat as champions?
No doubt. I mean, and until anybody proves otherwise, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, they have yet to lose a game in the sport. They had a player of the year in their quarterback. They've got receivers. They've got defense. I mean, they're the real deal. And I think it was interesting too when I saw the brackets come out. There's a pretty good correlation between teams that have good flag football teams and teams that have good tackle football teams. Those schools, obviously, there's something in the hallways there, something in the drinking fountains that's producing good football players on both sides of that ledger.
Well, and what's funny, I think back to media day for CHSAA Fall Sports when it was the girls flag football players from Mountain Vista who basically they admitted that there's so much carryover between the two teams, right? That the girls understand the sport more because they're running a lot of the same plays that the boys are running because they're sharing coaching staffs. Of course, Mountain Vista football coach Garrett Looney is the offensive coordinator for the flag team because he wants to spend more time with his daughter Braylon, who also plays for both teams. So that's that kind of correlation shouldn't be surprising when you're getting to a school like Mountain Vista. But you're right, Dougie. I mean, Arvada West, Ralston Valley are highly ranked teams. I think Valor Christian, I want to say Legend. All those schools are doing a fantastic job in both the boys and girls end. So it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out. Over in 4A, TCA lost the state title game last year, and they come in as the number 1 seed in 4A. They already have a win over last year's state champion in Mountain View. And if you look at their 3 losses, it's to, I believe it was Doherty, Ralston Valley, and Arvada West, 3 teams that are ranked very, very high on that bracket. On the 5A bracket. Is this going to be one of those cases for the Titans where, they've prepared for this state tournament by putting together the toughest schedule they can imagine?
Absolutely. And they're battle tested. And you lose in the state championship, it leaves literally the worst taste in your mouth for an entire offseason. So, they've been thinking about what they could have done. And if memory serves, that was a close game. They had a chance to win that championship last season and just narrowly missed. So, there's obviously a handful of teams that can win it in 4A, but I would say that's a good favorite for right now, especially because they kind of are on that mission. They've been there and done that, even though they came up just short, which I think can be an advantage going into the following year.
First round games for the flag football state tournaments begin tomorrow at home sites, and then they'll shift to the NAC, Trailblazer Stadium, and Jeffco Stadium. Of course, Jeffco is a massive proponent of flag football. A big part of that is I know being in proximity of Gold Crown Foundation, which is another massive supporter of flag football. It's going to be a great couple weekends. State championship games will be played on October 25th at Trailblazer Stadium. Colorado Preps will have complete coverage of that. I don't know if it'll be me. I don't know if it'll be our friend Dennis Ployce, depending on what happens with state softball championships and who makes those title games. But we will have full coverage of all those state championships. Speaking of more tournament play, the individual boys tennis state tournaments will get underway at Denver City Park for 5A. The 4A tournament will be taking place at Pueblo City Park as regionals were competed for over the weekend. Doug, with your dad being the commissioner, a former CHAS commissioner, growing up, did he ever? And I know that Bob is a big tennis guy. He's played a lot in his life. Did you ever get dragged to the state tennis championships?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've been to several of them. And the thing that always gets me, and it still gets me, is that you call your own ins and outs in this sport. And I think a lot of people that haven't been to a high school tennis meet don't really realize that there's not a Wimbledon umpire sitting in a chair, and there's definitely not the on-screen technology that gives you the digital readout of in or out. So I love the fact that kids are on the honor code calling their own ins, outs, faults, whatever it is. And it impresses me how tough that is to do at times when literally everything's on the line. And you're asking a kid not only to compete toe to toe, but be, as honorable as they possibly can in calling games, big plays or, hits in a tennis match. So I always found that very interesting. And, I always had a lot of questions from my dad about that. How does that work? What if they disagree? All those things. So that's fun to watch. But I mean, the tennis in this state is unreal. So, it's good to watch on that front too.
It's funny you mentioned that. I mean, this goes back years. It was a girls tennis state tournament. I ended up going to the 5A #1 singles final, and there was contention when calling your own match. And so there had to be an official that came over. I'm not going to name the schools. I'm not going to name the players, but by the rule, they actually should have ended the match with a forfeit based on one player making the wrong call time after time after time. And she ended up losing through play anyway, but it was a surreal experience. I remember sitting next to my friend John Yunt as we were both covering the same match. And there are several times where our eyes nearly bugged out of our head when we were watching what was going on. So overall, it's one of those sports that when I first got into this, Doug, you kind of roll your eyes at the idea of having to work tennis because I've always grown up to be a football, baseball, basketball, golf guy. It's some of the most fun that I actually have working a high school state championship. Pueblo City Park, Ed Francis, who for a long time has run the site down there, always does a fantastic job. They do a great job at City Park for 5A. And then next Tuesday, which will be a week from tomorrow, all the teams will convene. The remaining teams, the championship match teams, will convene at Denver Tennis Park, the indoor facility right next to All City Stadium, for the team championships, and we'll have complete coverage of that at coloradopreps.com as well. Other quick news and notes before we get to our standouts and get out of here. But girls volleyball teams are chasing league championships this week with a lot of regular season tournament action taking place next week. The big one to watch, and we'll be there, will be the Cheyenne Mountain Invite at the Broadmoor World Arena. It's actually 2 weeks away. We've got some meeting to talk about logistics. We provided some live scoring, great coverage of that tournament. It's aside from state and maybe on top of state, it is the best grouping of teams that are going to play against each other. You see those top teams in 4A, they're going to play your top teams in 3A. So highly encourage everyone coming out to there. Softball regional pairings have been released. I just checked CHAS's website. Play begins this weekend, and the 16-team state tournament brackets will be released next week. With the state tournaments beginning October 24th at Aurora Sports Park. I'm going to put you on the spot again. Is that one that your dad kind of had you tag along with from time to time when you were a kid?
Yeah, and I think I've probably said it on the show before, but he used to always say, you want to see the best baseball players in the state, go watch the state softball tournament, because And I think, this theme carries through whether you're talking about tennis or golf or softball. The level of play when you get to a state championship bracket is unreal. And these are sports that you don't necessarily think of wow, I'm going to go see something that you've never seen before, but the ability of these kids that make it to the state bracket, it's tremendous. And state softball, I think, is one that showcases that incredibly well. I mean, we've got college softball players all over the country playing at major Division I programs. So you want to get a preview of the ones that you can see on ESPN in a couple of years. Like this is the tournament to go to.
Yep, and just some quick notes on that. Broomfield is the number 1 seed for the 5A. In the 5A postseason, Windsor takes the number 1 seed in the 4A postseason, and it's University, not Eaton, who takes the number 1 seed in 3A. However, if Eaton wins the state title, in fact, I think even if they get to the semifinals, then they'll get hit with that dominant program bylaw that was just passed in April, and they'll be a 4A team in the next cycle. So that is something to definitely keep an eye on when it comes to that. So Dougie, I think we've rambled on enough. We've had some good fun today, but let's head to our standouts, letter winners. What caught your eye this week? I think you've got 2 in there.
Yeah, I got a couple. First one, I'm going to go out to Jay McDonald of Summit Cross Country. He won the Warrior Lincoln Park Classic with a time of 14:18. Bobby Reyes notes the course, and this is for you cross country guys. The course was closer to 3 miles than the full 3.1. I don't know if Bobby had his measuring tape, really, really long measuring tape, but he did note that. So Bobby is on top of it, as he is on top of all things cross country. So in addition to shouting out Jay, we're going to shout out Bobby. My other one, though, which I think, you had mentioned earlier in the show that Akron had a big win this weekend, and they threw the ball all over, which is not the norm in 8-man football. But if you look at the stat line for Jackson Livesay, he had 5 catches for 178 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. So you want to talk about efficient, 5 catches, 178 yards. You can do the math. You don't really even need a calculator to tell you that that's a lot of yards per reception. So Jackson Livesay, that's an amazing performance out in Akron.
I think that equates to over 30 yards per catch with a couple of touchdowns. He only had 3 catches that weren't touchdowns. So
yeah,
fun note about that.
I say get him the ball. That's a pretty good rule, I would guess.
Fun note about that kid. He thought he was playing a good chunk of last baseball season with a torn meniscus. Never came out. He was the catcher for the Rams and ended up hitting what I think turned out to be he would have been the game tying run, but he hit a double, and then of course a courtesy ran for him as a catcher. But you want to talk about a multi-sport athlete who does a lot of things very well. Jackson is right there. So quick note with Bobby's information, he pulled it all from the Strava feed of some of the runners running in the course. That might sound like gibberish to you, but makes perfect sense to a guy like me.
I've seen your Strava app. I know what you're talking about.
That's right. And then I'll wrap it up with Aubrey Rothermich from Alamosa Girls Volleyball. She's got a state best hitting percentage of 482. I ask every volleyball coach I ever come into contact with how hitting percentages are calculated, because you always see the negatives, and it always throws me off. But I know if you're hitting 300, you're doing very well. She's at 482 on the season, and she has the Mean Moose that's sitting number 1 so far right now in the 3A selection and seeding index. So they could head into the postseason with that number 1 ranking. And with that's going to do it for us. We got to thank our guy, Jermaine Stafford, as always. Danny Bailey, the executive producer, who's responsible for tolerating our nonsense for about an hour and 20 minutes each week. And Fountain Fort Carson coach Jake Novotny for giving us some great insight to the Trojans and being a good sport with some viewer-related questions. So for the editor-in-chief of Mile High Sports, Doug Ottewill, I'm the editor-in-chief of Colorado Prep's Dan Mohrmann, and we'll catch you guys next week.